Hello. Today's guest is someone who started his dream in the kitchen and turned it into his first neighborhood bar and restaurant. Just wait until you hear the story behind it. I was so inspired when I heard it, I had to bring him on as a guest. Currently, he's the founder and CEO of Upstream Hospitality Group, a fast growing restaurant portfolio across Long Island and beyond. Their brands include Top Room, Bango Bowls, and several iconic seasonal waterfront venues. Wait till you hear some of these places, so special. And they're all united by one mission to go upstream by leading with originality and pushing the boundaries. James Bonanno, welcome to the show.
Hey, Lauren, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. You are such an inspiration. We'll get into it, but recently your group won top workplace of 2025. And that's part of what I want to talk to you about. Just a lot of the culture that you've led over there, and I hope that many restaurant groups that are listening can really think about it as they position themselves in 2026. So congrats on that
Yeah, thank you.
award.
Thank
It's
you.
very awesome. Okay, so just to start here, over the past 10 years, you've scaled simply from one restaurant, literally, to 20 plus location hospitality group. You employ over 1,000 people, which is incredible. You understand what it takes to grow and to scale and to build people into the journey. So take us back to the first tap room. What was the vision and what was the moment that you knew you were going to make it happen?
Sure. It was 15 years ago. It was early 2011. I was bartending in my 20s. My current partner, Dave, and I met bartending, and we were really just spitballing ideas. Hey, we want to open our own place. And back then, craft beer was kind of just starting to grow. Really great scratch made pub fare was not anywhere near as popular as it is today. So that was kind of the thought and the vision behind it. And our boss at the time owned a restaurant up the street, and that location he actually moved to the other side of town because he needed a bigger location. So our original location was sitting vacant for a handful of months. So we called him, asked him what he was doing with the place. He said, meet me there in 15 minutes. It all happened really, really fast. We met. He said, you have a concept. We kind of described exactly. It's kind of cool how it played out because exactly kind of how what we described back then, this, local casual gathering place, a lot of rotating great beers, chef-driven comfort food, and just, casual hangout, neighborhood spot. That was the idea. And he had a partner at the time who was a chef. My partner Dave and I were both bartenders. We didn't really know much about the back of the house. So they actually didn't want to sell it to us, but they said, we'll partner with you guys. So we said yes. We didn't realize all the licensing was current. So he said, we'll open in 2 weeks, which was kind of a shock to us. We're like, oh my God, this, was an idea yesterday. And now we're opening our first restaurant in 2 weeks. He asked if we had the money. We looked him in his eyes, shook his hand, said yes. We actually had no money. It turned out we needed, I think it was like $150,000. And, we said we had it. And we just turned around and we asked everyone we knew if we could borrow some money, we'll pay them interest. And it actually came pretty easily. Within a week, we had raised the money and we were in business. And, that first location opened a few weeks later. So, like I said, it just happened really fast.
So incredible. I mean, I think sometimes it actually is helpful when you have a rapid timeline like that because you don't have a lot of time to spin your wheels. It's clear that you guys knew what you wanted to do, had a belief in it, and everything lined up. But, obviously, with it being something that came together so fast in 2 weeks, what did that teach you about taking action before you feel ready? Has that been a theme that you've had since then and modeled in other areas, or kind of
Sure. Yeah.
is
I
that
mean, a
more
lot of people, you kind of hear the term analysis by paralysis, and a lot of people, have these dreams and, they might want to open their first business and they never take that first jump. It only gets harder, as life gets more complex and complicated and, potentially marriage and kids and mortgages and, it just gets harder. So, I think the entrepreneur route was always, I knew I always say I was kind of unemployable. In my 20s, I knew I was going to go start a business. I was just trying to figure out, and I dabbled in a thing or two, prior to the restaurants, but, I knew that was the entrepreneur path was my path. I was just trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I worked in restaurants my whole life since I was, 13 years old. So it was ultimately the only thing I really knew and the thing I loved. So I had to pretty good feeling that, the hospitality industry was the route I was gonna go down. So when this opportunity came up, in an up and coming neighborhood, and again, the beer market was just starting to grow, like, a lot of things were starting to align. So it was kind of an easy decision for me to kinda take that jump.
So then another jump is going from one to the next. I don't know if you guys intended to start with one headed into as a group, or if there was a moment in time that pushed you guys going from one into that next location. Can you share that? As I'm sure we have a lot of people that could be within five and want to go to 20, and whatever that leap looks like for a listener. Just curious to hear what were some of the metrics that you wanted to make sure you had in place before you did so, or what kind of pushed the boundary to start that growth process?
Sure, yeah. I knew I wanted to grow and I wouldn't be content, owning one restaurant with three other partners. Fortunately, 2 years in, those original two guys asked to be bought out, and we're still friends. One's actually a still partner in one of our seasonal locations, so it was amicable. But it was really Dave and I, and that first tap room was, if I never would have thought that would be the brand I was scaling when we first started. I thought we would, chalk the first one up with these other guys as a learning experience, and then we'd go figure something out and scale it. But the brand did very well. I mean, we were kind of busting at the seams, and we bought the building and doubled the size, and again, ended up buying those guys out. So, we were just learning how to be restaurateurs and entrepreneurs. We were in our 20s there, and
Wow.
when we opened our second location a handful of years later, pretty much, in another county on Long Island, 30 minutes away from our original one, which is where we grew up. So the second one, we didn't know anyone. It wasn't our friends in the neighborhood coming to support us. This was, uh, you know, totally going into a market where we didn't know anyone, and we did just as well, if not better. So we're like, you know what? I think we have something that people want, and
Mm,
let's grow this thing. And I think just the evolution in the phase of a business, going from that mom and pop business where as the founder you're wearing every hat and it's very reactive, and you're just doing everything, until you might open a second location or a third location, and it's still kind of that, at least in my experience. We took our best employee and made her our regional manager, but at the end of the day, it was me, Dave, and her as three firefighters, right? And we were just going around and we were just reacting. Um, and then, I kind of looked around, and some of the guys I worked for, which I really respected, and they had a handful of restaurants and they were successful and they were leaders in their community. But at the end of the day, being a small business owner, typically the business owns you, right? And it's you're at the call of the business, whether it's, especially in hospitality, whether it's nights, weekends, holidays. It's hard to take a week vacation, forget 2 weeks. And I was just looking around. I was looking at the landscape of national chains that had hundreds or thousands of locations, and realizing that the owner founder is not in these restaurants every day. So I'm going to do what it takes to learn how to run a professional organization like that, as opposed to this reactive mom and pop organization, that I kind of experienced in the restaurants that I grew up in.
That actually, I mean, that totally answers my next question. That is so fascinating. In terms of an operational or leadership decision that's fundamentally changed how you work today. So if I heard you correctly, it sounds like, firefighting is just part of that, evolution of being an entrepreneur. You're all in, you're protective. And then especially as you take new risks and push the boundaries, you go into a new market, you don't have the relationships already established there. Hard to delegate, I imagine.
Right.
How did you do it? Did you get with a networking group that taught you, do you have a business coach? I mean, what are some of the tools was it a book that you read? I mean, how did you actually learn how to fully
Sure.
step out and start to delegate?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of a bunch of things you just hit on, actually. But, um, I read hundreds of business books, and one I recall, the E-Myth, and that was a great book on just that, growing from the small mom and pop business to a professional organization. Technology was growing, so this is, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago at this point. But we really said, hey, we need to somehow bring an operational piece of technology into the business. We need to get a grasp on our numbers. We need to have a real-time food cost, liquor cost. How you can't be operating a business if you don't know your numbers. So I think that was one pivotal point when we first decided to use technology.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was, yeah, we ended up hiring a great coach and consultant who's helped other brands scale. So, I'm a big fan of kind of shedding your ego. I've seen other people in the industry that had a handful of locations that, I think their ego stopped them from going to hire a coach. And I'd hear, what do they know that you don't know? And for me, that
Yeah.
just stopped the conversation right there. I was like, yeah, I might be able to figure things out, but it might take longer. I'll probably make more mistakes. I'm going to invest the time and the money into a coach who has been there, done that, and is kind of one step ahead of us, if you will. And that process alone was instrumental, and it was just an amazing experience, being able to build a team, build the right tech stack, and ultimately build the foundation to, handle real growth.
So cool. I was talking to someone, it's completely outside of the hospitality space, but they were a small business owner. They invested about 10 years into their business in a business coach. And it was so fun to talk to her about the impacts that that individual has had on her revenue stream. And she said these businesses for them are like widgets. And it's so easy when you're not involved to make some of these tough calls as long as you have the trust, which you do normally when you invest in that.
Sure.
But I was fascinated to hear, obviously her value that she placed on it, but like the specific things that the coach had suggested she implement, and she does
Yeah,
wonderfully.
and
So,
one thing some people might not realize is, when you're working with a coach who's working with other emerging brands all over the country,
yeah,
they're getting exposed to the latest and greatest, whether it's trends or tech or software or what's working for another brand. So,
yeah,
there's at least our coach had very strict confidentiality. So I didn't even know what other brands she was working with for the most part. Um, but some of the insights saying, "Hey, have you thought of this, or have you used this recruiting agency, or have you used this software, or have you hired
mhm,
this, or this dashboard you can implement, or like so many different things of stuff that was actually working in other brands in other parts of the country, which is just
so cool.
great insight.
That's so great. So, as you scaled and culture being such an important piece to the hospitality space, how did you keep that culture? How did you keep the neighborhood bar feel even as you grew into a larger organization?
Sure. So I mean, you hit it. Culture-wise, we're in a people business. We're serving people. We employ a lot. We have over 1,000 team members. So, um, when we first started, Dave and we expected results, but we were very, I think accommodating is the right word.
Yeah,
we wanted to respect the people working with us. We want to realize that, they have their own lives and their own personal lives, and that they might be spending a large amount of their time. We might be that second family, but they do have a first family, and we
yeah,
want to be respectful of them and their work-life balance, and so inevitably as things scale, and I'm not in the restaurants as much as I would love to be, but with over 20 restaurants, it's just impossible to be in them all the time. And so it was, how do you kind of keep that thought and that culture? And one of our core values is saying yes. And
mm,
when we were putting these down on paper, which was our coach a handful of years ago, hey, let's get the values of the company down on paper. That
yeah,
kinda came really easily because that was on top of our minds, like, how do we keep this culture? And Dave and I would, within reason, would pretty much say yes. So, when it came to people, one example I give with the team is that we had a bartender who's like, "Hey, I wanna go backpack Europe for 3 months, but I love
mm,
working with you guys. When I come back, can I have a job?" And I was like,
yeah,
"Yes." Like, it might be hard for you to keep your Tuesday night shift, but you know, you've been great.
yeah,
We'll figure it out, right? So,
yeah.
that's what we kinda, instill in the leaders of our stores to, kinda have that accommodating mentality to, keep that culture.
So you talked about values, one of them being yes. Any other key values that you're open to sharing with as far as grounding principles for Upstream?
Yeah, I just quality was one that came, like, really quick, when we were putting these on paper. I think it's part of the reason why Dave and I have a model partnership. I mean, we've always pretty much been aligned, and we always wanted to
Mm,
put out a quality product, whether that is the furniture we're buying or whether that's the food we're putting out, or, even in COVID, I remember when we really had to pivot and uh, do outdoor dining. And fortunately, we were in Long Island and there was a lot of sidewalks and parking lots. But, I remember he came back one day and he's like, "Hey, I bought a tent for $10,000 and I went and bought a 80-inch TV to decorate this back parking lot we had." And he didn't have to ask me because we were both aligned that we needed a quality experience, even though it was going to be in a parking lot. When
yeah,
that wasn't the only answer because our competitors two doors down went to Target and bought six pop up tents, 10 by 10 tents that they tied. They probably only spent $400 with
yeah.
these instead of 10,000. So it wasn't about spending the money, but we just, we wanted to create a quality experience, even though it was COVID. So,
Yeah.
that's one we kind of hang our hat on for sure.
How about technology? You talked about it for a minute there, but what principle as far as technology has had the biggest impact in how your business has had success today?
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier. Technology, it's in the restaurant industry the past 10 years is just, it's been wild, especially with AI, but it's been wild to see, everything that has come about. But we've always considered ourselves pretty tech forward, and like I said, like 10 years ago, we made that commitment to be a professional organization and take a weekly inventory and have our purchase orders run through the software so we could have, real time food costs and liquor costs, and without that, it's really hard to run a professional business, right? You're very reactive. If you get your numbers, um, it might, if you have a good accounting process and team, maybe you get your P&L a month later, maybe, but it's probably longer than that, and we
Yeah.
really wanted it within 10 days. So it wouldn't be possible to have that financial visibility if, we weren't using software like that.
Yeah, technology, especially when you're spread out across different region like that, enhances your visibility, makes things pretty clear, and you can make quicker, well-informed decisions. So, all right.
Exactly.
So on character and hiring, I've heard you say this before. You can't flip the character switch, and I loved that. What does it mean to you when it comes to building a team, and how is it that you spot a kind of character in someone early on?
Sure. Well, I think what you're referring to is I look back on my career and just kind of some of the breaks, if you will, and how that happened. So, that first partnership, when that first restaurant was vacant, our
Yeah.
boss was fielding multiple offers from different people or different groups who wanted to partner with him to take that space. And
Mhm.
he ultimately chose Dave and I. And then our seasonal restaurants, it was a handful of years later, but they are prime locations on the ocean. They're government contracts. We had to bid on them. 20 different hospitality groups locally bid on them, and we ended up partnering with that, our original boss at that first spot Dave and I met bartending. And it was the same story. There was other groups really trying to partner with them, and they ended up choosing us, and we chose them, to partner with. So I kind of look back and I had worked for them for 10 years. So I didn't realize it when I was working them from, a high school kid on in my 20s, but uh, that was kind of my resume of partnering with
Mhm.
them 10 years later, right? So
Yeah.
and also raising that money, to never owning a restaurant to raising the money within a few days. Um, you kind of look back and say, how did that happen or why did that happen? And I just think it goes to character. Like, we Dave and I were great employees of theirs. We showed up, we did what we said we would do. Um, and the phrase you're saying, I couldn't flip on that character switch when I was ready to partner with them. I had to just have kind of that good character all along. So in this business, we say it all the time, it's cliche, but we could have a great burger or a beautiful restaurant or but it's all about the people, right? So
Yeah.
as we are growing and scaling and building the business, opening more locations, for me, it's really about surrounding myself with amazing people
Mhm.
who have character, who have loyalty, who have expertise. I say I'm just trying to really hire people smarter than me, and I feel like I've done a good job at that. Maybe it's not that hard, but in their respective fields, we have some really great people on the team. So, uh, you know, identifying that character, is n- not maybe not always the easiest, right? When you're going through a interview process, but I think we've done a pretty good job of finding that, and ultimately digging deep on what matters to them, and kind of checking character references. But that's very important.
Yeah, I that story's so important for me because I think there's so many people listening, especially in the college generation and just after, that are doing jobs and doing work every day, and sometimes it doesn't feel meaningful. Just the reminder of you never know how the relationships in your life are gonna support you, and you never know when you need to rely on who for what, or how you can be that for someone else. I mean, that's a whole other end of it too, is how we can be mentors for other people in the industry and offer out that hand. But all of these are bound together through relationship, through people in our community. So when you've originally told this story, that I'm still just so amazed that the Upstream group is started by the tap room, which started in 2 weeks, which was a result of that relationship you had because, again, you were an employee for 10 years that just did your job. You were reliable. And when he looked back on that experience, it was an easy yes. There's no interview and resume that could have pushed him into that yes. So I just really think that's such an inspiring story and want to call that out. I love it. I think it's so interesting. And then on the other side of that, as you hire folks, and I talk to a lot of people just about that. You know, hiring in today's industry, it's not so much about compensation anymore as it is about work life balance and flexibility. And we know that's hard to find in the hospitality space. So how is it that an organization like y'all with top workplace who can be the yes people, how do you do both? How do you run a strong organization while maintaining a nice balance for the employees that tend to value that in this time? Can you enlighten us?
Sure, yeah. So, I kind of look at, we have our store level operators and team members, and then we have our, leadership team that, oversees all the stores. So, kind of two different spots right there. But, as far as the operators go, I think traditionally a lot of restaurant managers are used to working those 55, 60-hour work weeks,
Yeah.
which we don't. We definitely keep that in the 40s. So I
Right.
think right there just gives them a little bit more of their time back and their flexibility. um as there's pros and cons as being that mom and pop one restaurant operator until, getting to 10, 20 plus restaurants. I think in the early days, we were even more flexible and accommodating if a manager needed off because, they had something that was very important to them personally. I mean, myself or Dave would be the first ones to jump in and say, "Yeah, of course you got to go to your niece's first birthday. We'll come work with you." Obviously, that gets a little bit more challenging, when it's a lot larger. But it's kind of that same mentality, at least, is, hey, let's respect, even if you use your PTO, let's figure out a way, that you can not miss an important life event like that. So, it's a little bit different how we handle it operationally, but it's the same philosophy, if you will.
I think this was done with your leadership group, but I caught wind of you with the firefighting group. And you've actually used
Yeah.
the term firefighting in terms of just being an entrepreneur. But I'm curious about that experience. What did you guys do, and what was the purpose to serve your
Yeah,
leadership
so
team?
it wasn't with my leadership team, it was with a business group I'm in called YPO, but we went
Fun.
to the FDNY Academy a few weeks ago, and it was an incredible experience. They basically, without any training, which was the purpose of it. It was supposed to be an experience for us to come out of it to say how what do we learn, but we went into different situations as far as how to take a fire hose and advance it and shoot a target, or how we actually went in a burning building, and we had to carry the hose with fully masked and go through a hallway and turn into a room when there was a fire. We had to put out a fire. The FDNY actually has a really cool, they built a mock subway, so you go into this subway with subway
Wow.
cars, and it's yeah, I mean, you feel like in a real subway. There's speakers and there's bodies in there, and it's dark and
Wow.
it's smoky and it's loud, and you got to find the bodies and recover. So it was a really cool
Wow.
experience. Um, and without any planning, the after going through these 5 exercises, basically the summary is we could have planned better. Like, did you go into it with your group, whether it's 2 or 5 people? Did you have a plan? Was there a designated leader? What was your communication plan? Did you communicate, right? So, there was a lot of things we took from that you could apply into a business setting, but yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Every young man's dream. That is so fun.
Yeah, it
And
was.
female. I hope my daughters grow up to be firefighters. I have one that I in particular, I'm, like, gunning for her.
We had a lot of females with us. We had, some fellow female CEOs, and, uh, it was great, and I definitely have a much, much, much deeper respect for firemen and what they go
Mm.
through and the intensity of it and how they have to pivot. Every emergency situation is different, so even though you kinda have a playbook and a general idea of what you need to do, you go into, a burning building, and it's pitch black and it's dark. You don't know the layout of the building, you don't know the layout of
Oh,
the
wow.
furniture. You don't know if the building's about to collapse, if there's a body you have to rescue in the 3rd bedroom, right? So it's very intense, and you really have to kind of pivot on the fly. So,
Wow.
like I said, it was very cool.
All right, let's talk about your restaurants, namely the ones with, your salt shack, like the real nichey waterfront seasonal venues. If for those that are local to the Long Island area or run through there often, maybe pick one or two and just highlight for someone who's not familiar, what would they experience walking into the
Yeah,
brand?
Salt Shack's really cool, unique place on Long Island, and just in general. It's oceanfront. It's on a big piece of beach on the South Shore of Long Island. There's 80 volleyball courts on the
Wow.
ocean. So there's a huge volleyball league Monday through Friday. Thousands of people playing volleyball right on our doorstep. It's a 2-level beach club that holds a couple thousand people. Uh, Big stage. We have bands 7 nights a week. We ship up palm trees actually from Florida every year.
No
So,
kidding.
so it really gives that tropical island vibe. I mean, what we share with our team and our messaging is we're really just trying to provide that 2-hour vacation where you don't have to jump on a
Yeah.
flight, where you can just kind of drive
Wow.
over the bridge, over the bay on the Great South Bay on Long Island, and really come to this really cool beach venue. So that's Salt Shack, and just 5 miles west, we have 2 other waterfront restaurants right there. Um, you know, Pretty similar. One's more of an entertainment venue, boatyard, but same thing, bands, 7 nights a week, and right on the beach, incredible sunsets. The sun just melts right into the water. So
Wow.
yeah, they're just great, fun summer Long Island venues.
So cool. I mean, that palm tree story is unreal. How do you even know to do that? That's incredible, but it's a nice touch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. We ship up a lot of palm trees every single summer, but
Wow.
that really it really creates the vibe for the
Wow.
restaurants. It wouldn't be the same without the palm trees.
Okay, let's get into trends a little bit because you guys are at the front of it. So, what trends are you seeing right now in the food service industry that are capturing your attention?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know to say I would trends. I would say more just with the economy
Yeah.
and the guest experience. I mean, obviously in food service in the restaurant industry, the guest experience is what we do, and that's at the forefront of everything we do. But
Yep.
I just think more so than ever, with the economy's kind of been the uncertainty of it the last couple of years and going into 2026, I think the consumer um, value is a word we are kind of talking about a bunch. And, when I'm
Yeah.
talking to the team, it's not necessarily value in, hey, let's give someone the cheapest option. It's more value on the experience, right? If the guest is saying, hey, this is going to be $100 tonight, just did I get the value in spending $100? Um, and was my experience spot on? From step one to the end. So, uh, it's just I think it's forcing us to be way better operators. I mean, we've been just really in the past year focusing on that guest experience and making sure it could ultimately the best it could be.
What makes you specifically excited about Upstream Hospitality Group for next year and beyond?
We have a couple brands that are really exciting and growing. We are about to grow into a new market, which I haven't publicly
Fun.
said, but maybe I'll break the news with you, Lauren. But we are looking to grow into New Jersey. Uh,
Awesome.
so yeah, so we have some real estate that we are looking into, and we have a couple locations that initially make sense. So I think in 2026, we'll be opening in a second state, and we're really excited about that.
So exciting. Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, as we round out the show, I'm going to ask a couple what I call rapid fire questions. I did not prompt you with these. And so give it your best answer. You ready?
Sure, let's go.
All right. What is your favorite productivity hack that saves you the most time as you approach the week or work day?
My favorite productivity hack. That's a good question. My favorite productivity hack. So we use ClickUp as a project management software for our leadership team,
Ah,
and the AI is now fully like baked into it, and it's pretty incredible. Where I have someone on my team, my marketing director, who's just you know AI wizard, very in tune, ClickUp, power user, and he's built a very cool view for me, a dashboard, an executive dashboard, he calls it, and the AI kind of reads our whole annual plan and all what all my leadership team is working on or accomplishing on, and it
wow.
gives me a quick full report of where we stand, where we're behind, or where we're ahead on everything we're working on. So it's a really quick, cool tool for me to get a snapshot of everything happening in the organization.
Love that. It's called ClickUp.
Yeah, yeah, that's the project management tool we're using.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. What has been your proudest moment?
What has been my proudest moment? Um, uh, I don't know if it's so. I'd say I wouldn't say it's the proudest moment, but I would say just a realization as the team member count recently, the past year or so has grown over 1,000 members. Um, I don't take that lightly. I'm
Yeah.
proud that I'm proud that we're building something that can support so many people. Uh, I'm proud that the decisions I'm making on a daily basis impact the 1,000 people plus their families, so literally thousands of people. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm just proud that we can build something and help support so many.
I mean, 1,000 people is, your team and organization, and then to your point, from there, it tentacles out to all the families, but all those that you and the 1,000 serve every day, all the experiences that you're delivering, people that are funneling in and out of your restaurants too. I mean, it's truly
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
that's what's fun about hospitality. I mean, I think we've had about 1,000,000 guests, walk through the doors in
Wow.
2025. So, when you think of all those experiences and interactions and,
Yeah.
uh, you know, people have, and even team members have gotten married, they've met working with us and they're married and they have kids, or,
So cool.
people have all these life moments in our restaurants. I mean, that's one of the joys of being in this business.
It's so cool. One of the things that we do on this show is we offer guests a chance to ask a question that the next guest will answer. So, an anonymous guest here has asked this question to pose to you. So,
Cool.
here it is. In hospitality, we talk a lot about creating memorable guest experiences. We've even talked about it today on the show. But what's one thing that you do to create memorable team experiences behind the scenes?
Sure. So, I feel like I want to say a few things. As far as memorable team experience, so we probably close the restaurants more than your national chains.
Hmm,
I'm starting to understand it at scale why some of these national chains are open on some holidays, but we close on a bunch of holidays. The day after Labor Day, which is called Tumbleweed Tuesday, if you haven't heard that, but
I
that's
have not.
at least
That's so good.
that's what we call it here on Long Island. Um, but we close all the restaurants. We bring all the team members to Salt Shack for a fun beach day, and
Aw,
they really love that. And it's those little things that kind of helps culture and makes it fun. Um, we also do fun team contests. So like store versus store, we might run a um, whoever sells the most LTOs in January, and then that store wins, and then we kind of give prizes to the whole store. It kind of just keeps it light and
that's
fun.
cool.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so uh, just little things like that.
Yeah, and that's a great idea because it gives, onus back into the restaurants to drive, and I mean, I love that.
I
That
mean,
could probably work
yeah, I
too,
mean,
right?
it helps the business. It
Yeah,
and it helps the team members kind of get in the right mindset for whatever we're trying to accomplish. It makes it competitive,
mm,
and then they get to win something fun. So it's kind of there's wins all around.
very cool. Alright, so what question would you ask the next guest without knowing who they are?
Um, the next guest, I would ask them, what is one piece of technology that they're not currently using now, but they think they might want to adopt over the next 12 months.
That's a great one. It's a great one. All right, James, your story is such a reminder again that great things start small with character, clarity, and courage. And I'm just so appreciative that you came on today to share about Upstream. Um, I'm just so amazed at everything that you've accomplished and so excited to enjoy one of your restaurants myself when I'm in the Northeast. I've got a couple trips out there next year. So
Great.
uh, I cannot wait. And for those that are listening, please, we'll put all the names and locations in the show notes. And if listeners want to connect with you, maybe they're starting to get out on their own, maybe they're an emerging leader and want to grow from 2 to 10. Um, how can someone get a hold of you if they want to connect?
So you go to upstreamhg.com, and you can contact me through there or on LinkedIn. But I'd be happy to help anyone, answer any questions. I'm here to help. So
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Congrats on your success,
yeah,
James.
thanks for having me, and look forward to hosting in New York. Thanks, Lauren.
Awesome.